Welcome back, students of evolutionary psychology. Today, we're going to completely dismantle some of our most basic assumptions about human justice. For centuries, our legal frameworks have been built on a very specific idea of what punishment is actually supposed to achieve. But what if our brains evolved to seek something totally different? I want you to put your preconceptions aside for a bit, because we're diving deep into the true biological and psychological roots of why we penalize each other.
So let's start with a deceptively simple question. Why do humans punish? I mean, if someone wrongs you, your immediate instinct is usually to want them penalized, right? But why is that? Is it just some primitive animalistic urge for vengeance, or is there a highly sophisticated, uniquely human cognitive mechanism at play? As we'll see today, the data points far, far away from mere animal retaliation.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll look at the roots of shared norms, contrast sanctions with moral punishment, unpack the flaws of retribution, explore punishment as moral dialogue, and finally, compare the different justice models.
All right, part 1, the roots of shared norms and early enculturation. To really understand why adults send each other to prison, we actually have to look at how toddlers learn. Have you ever heard of over-imitation? It's absolutely fascinating. If you show a 2-year-old how to open a box to get a toy, but you deliberately tap the top of the box 3 times first, that toddler will also tap the box 3 times, even if it's visually obvious that the tapping does absolutely nothing to open the box. They copy these totally useless actions simply because they interpret them as normative rules. They are naturally wired to look for the proper way to do things, not just the most efficient way. And this early imitative behavior, it builds the ultimate foundation for understanding moral norms. Because unlike other primates, who mostly communicate just to get what they individually want, humans possess this deep-seated psychological need for shared intentionality. We don't just act alongside each other, we naturally form a collective we. Think about when a kid yells, "No, you're playing the game wrong." They're actually policing the shared intentions of the group. That right there is the very soil from which our sense of justice grows.
Moving on to Section 2, Sanction versus Moral Punishment. This is where it becomes about more than just a penalty. As we grow up, this intense need for shared norms completely shapes our reactions. We have to draw a hard line between a mere sanction and true moral punishment. Look, a sanction is essentially just animal training. It's a negative stimulus designed to deter a specific behavior. But moral punishment, that's an expressive act. It specifically conveys communal condemnation. It's society's way of saying, you showed a profound lack of respect toward our shared we.
Think of it like this. Getting a speeding ticket from a traffic camera is just a sanction. You pay the fine, but society doesn't harbor deep personal resentment towards you for it. But a community's absolute outrage at a serious, violent crime, that is driven by what we call reprobative blame. It's fueled by heavy emotions like resentment, indignation, and personal offense. The punishment in this case isn't just a fee, it's a profound expression of communal condemnation meant to fiercely defend the moral order.
Which brings us to Section 3. The flaws of retribution and the limits of payback. Let's see how this evolutionary perspective builds a massive critique against our traditional justice systems. For decades, psychological research, and honestly, the legal system as a whole, assumed we punished for 2 main reasons. First, retribution. The idea of just desserts, basically making an offender suffer simply because they made someone else suffer. And second, deterrence, using fear to scare the offender and the general public into compliance. It's essentially an eye for an eye, mixed with basic operant conditioning.
But the fundamental flaw in that traditional thinking is glaringly obvious when you look at the psychology. Pure retributivism relies on this strange sort of moral alchemy. It's the bizarre idea that adding pain to the world somehow magically subtracts a previous pain. But the psychological data tells a completely different story. It shows us that inflicting pure suffering as an end in itself totally fails to satisfy our human need to restore those shared values we just talked about.
The evidence against pure retribution is actually wild. For instance, in experiments where victims are allowed to punish an offender, but the offender will literally never know they were punished, so-called hidden punishment, the punisher is left completely dissatisfied. Plus, victims will frequently choose a totally harmless, symbolic punishment over a harsh physical one as long as it sends a crystal clear message. And get this, if an offender shows genuine remorse, our urge to punish them drops off a cliff. This absolutely proves that blind payback is not our actual goal.
Okay, Section 4, Punishment as Moral Dialogue.
This leads us right to the core thesis of our explainer today. Evolutionary psychology strongly suggests that our true urge to punish is an attitude-focused, two-way street. It is a dialogical act. We aren't just hitting a broken machine with a wrench to fix it. We are sending a highly loaded message to another human mind. And we desperately need them to understand that message. We fundamentally want them to recognize that they violated the shared intentionality of the group.
You can see the educational and communicative function of this everywhere in society. On a macro scale, we see it with formal restorative justice programs and community service, where the offender is actively repairing the harm to the community. But it happens on a micro scale too. Sometimes just a severely disapproving look or a skeptically raised eyebrow from your peers is enough of a social punishment to communicate a norm violation and drastically lower your social status, all without a single drop of physical suffering. And when the offender actually receives this moral message and displays real remorse, something incredible happens. The shared intentions of the group are validated. This dialogical act fundamentally transforms how the community perceives the wrongdoer, which opens the door for them to be reintegrated. The moral order isn't restored by their pain, you see. It's restored by their newly shared understanding.
Let's wrap this up in Section 5, comparing the justice models. Let's consolidate these theories. When we put the models side by side in this table, the disadvantages of the pure payback approach are just glaring. It focuses exclusively on suffering, it completely ignores the psychological satisfaction of the victim, and it honestly just ratchets up a cycle of conflict. Contrast that with the dialogical model. This approach actively strengthens a group's sense of justice by focusing on restoring values, educating the offender, and reinforcing that foundational we cohesion that we all learned back in childhood.
Ultimately, the communicative approach just completely redefines the landscape. While retribution seeks to balance a scale with pain, and deterrence essentially treats humans like animals to be conditioned with fear, the communicative model actually honors our profound cognitive capacity. Its true purpose isn't mindless payback. It's to spark an educational dialogue about shared respect.
So, as future psychologists and thinkers, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. Our current legal systems are built almost entirely on the architectures of retribution and deterrence. But if the science tells us we actually evolved to seek communication, value restoration, and social reintegration, and not just blind vengeance, what does that mean for the future of our prisons and our courts? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it challenges how you view justice moving forward.